interesting. That's why we went with the first episode, I guess. So anyhow, change is hard, right? Change can be stressful. Change can be for the better, it can be for the worse. Change can be fun, change can be sad. By better understanding how to go through change, we can turn major life changes into a time of joy rather than a time of stress, which is something that we're told to do in the book of James. If you remember, it talks about count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. When we struggle with change, it can lead to depression, anxiety, and I really needed Pam last week for the school counselor stuff. I'm going to come back to you several times tonight too, don't you worry. But it can lead to insomnia, anxiety, not eating. When we get stressed out, we can stop eating. And if that continues, it can even lead to like a post-traumatic stress disorder. These mental health issues can then lead to physical health issues as well. Throughout the Bible, we see people going through changes, some big, some small, some successes, some failures. Just like Gopi, we also go through changes throughout our life. So that's what we're talking about tonight is changes. First thing I want to talk about is the stages of life. So there are changes that we come to just naturally as we progress throughout life. Some of them I thought about were like, you know, you're born. That's a pretty big change, I think, for some people. I know it was very stressful for me. We then go through our toddler years, our adolescence. We go through puberty. We get to our teenage years. Then we get to, I don't know, after teenage, you hit adulthood. And after that, we quit having names for stuff, basically. You got your midlife crisis, and then you're just old, I guess. So we go through quite a few changes. Some things that we... Oh, I didn't point at David or anything.
But you look very disparaging.
Oh, okay. So we go through these changes. Some other ones would be, you know, having kids, right? That's another change that I would say a stage of life. Some people don't have kids, some people do. Other changes would be like getting married. Can you guys, question number one there, can you guys think of some other changes that we naturally progress through as we get older? I didn't be like, hey, you guys come up with 4 or 5 that I didn't think of, I'm sure.
I think putting up with pains that you didn't, some pains that you're now beginning to have, whether it be physical,
Okay.
primarily physical pains or pains.
Okay. Another one I didn't mention was death too later on.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be concerned after that at all.
Right. Right, but family members is what I'm thinking about with that one.
I don't mean you, I mean people in general.
Well, I was still with
Joel, a lot of the things that we go through as we get older, there's usually fear and anxiety tied in with them. And I think, and I'm noticing, or I've been noticing, especially for the last year, retiring.
Mm-hmm. That's
just not doing what you've done for so many decades, and all of a sudden, it's just you're not doing that, and that'll affect you on that when you start noticing little changes like you forget a little this or that, or something. I think probably one of the biggest fears coming up for a person as they get older is when you have to surrender your car keys, things like that. So the fears, the anxiety, but that you have those at a younger age too.
Oh, definitely.
Empty nest.
Empty nest. Tell me about that. What's that like? I'm years away from that one, but I can see that one being a big change. Having children. I mentioned having children. That's another. I think I did. Getting married, having children. Those are all things that we expect to happen for some of it. Again, not everybody, but
actually, those are my perspective. Those are all stressors.
You're right. Right.
Or they can be.
It can be, definitely. Definitely.
In that gallery over here.
I think too that having children, that takes a great part of your life, because even after they're gone, they're still your children.
They're never going.
Well, some of them are. We've been empty nesters a long time, and but as the parent, you always look at them as even though they're adults, you still look at them as your children.
Well, what I meant by never gone is you're always concerned about them,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
always still wondering how
Yeah,
things are going with them. Yeah, they're never really gone.
Right, and right, my parents are still holding on to a 35-year-old right now, so,
After 24 years living on with me.
right. All right, so those are some of the natural stages of life that we come to. Now, what are some of the unexpected changes that we go through? And question 2 asks this, it says, what unexpected change occurred to you? And explain its impact on your life. So unexpected changes, I would say stuff like, a divorce happening, or
Health problems.
health problems, yes, would be another one. An
Or your children
unexpected.
coming back home.
Coming back home, yes, ma'am.
That's a stress.
High school age.
Right? Oh, well,
Well, it's
No,
like,
they were,
not to put myself up anywhere, but when I had my heart attack, they took me into UNM, and I could hear bits and pieces because I was full of different medications. But I remember the doctor saying, or one of the doctors saying, well, he's having a major heart attack right now. And then I sat up partially,
which is probably what you should do.
and I looked at the doctor, one of the doctors, and I said, well, if I'm having a heart attack, how come I'm not dead right now? Shouldn't I be dead? And then I plopped back down. And then later, then they took me back there, and I was told different things later on. But what I was getting at was, I got asked by a couple of people, a few months down after the fact, said, hey, you remember when all that happened? I go, yeah, I remember some of it. Were you scared? I go, no. I says, with what I've been through, I go, that's, my answer was, well, if God wants to take me, he can take me. Well, what is there to be afraid of? And then that's kind of where the conversation ended. No, if he wants to take me now, he can take me now. Or he could have took me then. But, which came as a surprise.
Right. Anybody got a unexpected change that occurred in their life and how it impacted them? Or how it impacted those around them? Things I'm thinking, death of a spouse is definitely, death of a child, death of, somebody younger is an unexpected change that can occur. I think we all go through quite a few, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, which one's can be harder, expected change or an unexpected change? Unexpected, I would
You're not
probably
prepared
think.
for it.
Yeah, but I think with the expected ones, we can prepare for them a lot longer, and that can cause us more stress in some ways than other ones. But I think the unexpected changes are what have an impact on our life. And like you were talking about, Danny, you're not scared to go. You're not afraid of that because you know what's coming. But those in your family, that change would have affected them. Would have had a great effect on them.
Well, like even when I was working, when these guys were all high school age, my family doesn't know a lot of what I had gone through at work, but there's probably easily been 9 or 10 times I should have got killed, but I didn't. They know very little about it. I don't make an issue out of it, but some of the guys at work would say, hey, when you did that or when this happened, weren't you scared? Weren't you afraid? I go, no. I said, got to do what I got to do, but, if I die as a result of it, I got a reward coming, So there's really not a lot to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Some other unexpected changes I can think of would be losing a job, getting a new job somewhere else where you have to move somewhere. Those would be changes. David, your family with preaching, Vicky's mom, you move around all the time. You guys move quite a bit. I think at one point, my family, we were moving every 3 years from one state to another for a while. That can be that can affect the children as much, if not more, than the parents, I think, too. And it's something we really need to be looking at. But so next thing I want to talk about is a Christian change, when we become Christians. And the question I asked on number 3 was when you became a Christian, how extreme was the change? Was it drastic? Was it not very drastic? I think for some of us, before we answer that question, I think for some of us, becoming a Christian is an expected change in our life. The way I grew up, it was expected. It was something that, when I reached that age, when it came to that time, it was expected that I become a Christian. Where I think other people, it's an unexpected change. Some drastic event happens in your life, somebody comes into your life, and you become a Christian, and you weren't expecting it. It wasn't something that was planned out for you. Not something you were raised for it to be an automatic stage in your life. So anybody want to talk about that? I mean, it's something I think we should all be more than happy to talk about, David.
There's three things that stand out for me when I became a Christian. One of them was when the realization sinks in that the people who aren't going to do what you're about to do or not doing what you're doing, they're going to be lost forever. And when you realize that of relatives, close family members, it's a shock. Second thing is to realize you can't just go on with a lot of the things that you were doing. Those things have to stop. You give those things up. You don't do that anymore. It's not. And the third thing is to realize what's expected of you. What's put on you to be holy, to be a Christian, and I can go back and remember little incidents. I remember one time when I became a Christian and I was in the military overseas, and the change was so drastic and everybody noticed it. And from a lot of those people, there was a lot of, they'd mock you or, kind of castigate you or something like that along those lines. But after a while, they said, well, this is real, and then, but they ostracize you too, they push you out. You're not included as part of the gang because you don't do what they like to do. And I remember one night after we got off of an evening shift, which we'd get off about 10:30, I think it was, we'd get back to our compound. And I decided, I just want to visit with some of the guys and just kind of get along with them. And I remember going in and sitting down with them and thought, well, I can have a beer or two with them. And I was relaxed. I wasn't drunk or anything, and just joking around with someone. So I went on back to my room. I had guys knocking on my door the next morning, some of the other Christians, saying, "What happened to you last night?" They said you were just drunk and crazy, and no. But they noticed the changes really quick, and they're very critical of those things. So those are the three things that really stand out for change for me when I became a Christian.
Okay.
And the ones that'll ostracize you the most, hate to say it, but it's usually your own immediate family.
I've still got 2 letters that my grandmother wrote to me. She wrote them in Spanish, so it's a good thing I can't, read all that. But I had a guy translate them both for me one time, man, and she just, man, I had left the faith of my fathers and this and that. I mean, she just let me have it. How disappointed she was in me and, all that stuff. But yeah, your family members, the ones closest to you. Yeah.
Anybody else? Drastic change? Anything they would like to talk about with that? What kind of change?
Many of us were raised in the church and didn't have a drastic change when we became Christians. Like I was raised in a Christian home. At the time, my father was not a Christian. My mother was very dedicated, took me and my little brother to church all the time. But the day I decided to become a Christian, I told my mother, this Sunday I'm going to go forward. And I told my daddy, who came to church, but he never participated. He was never a Christian. In fact, he was a agnostic. He didn't know if there was a God or not, didn't really care. But he came to church with my mother and myself and my brother. So I told him I was going to go forward and become a Christian, and I was afraid he was going to follow me out. Because I knew his background. I was 12 years old. And the next day, he called me to his chair and he said, "Why don't you and me both go forward to become a Christian?" Not like to knock me out, not give me the 2x4. Nobody expected that from him. And that Sunday, we stepped out in the aisle, and my little brother came with us. He was a year younger than me, and we were all 3 baptized that same day. And but I knew that, you know, I was raised in the church. I went Sunday night as well as Wednesday night and Sunday mornings. But I knew I had to step up and be a better person and talk about obeying your parents. You know, I heard that in the scriptures. I got to start obeying my parents better. You know, so little things as a kid is what I was thinking about. I knew I had to step up a little higher standard than when I was a child, before I was a Christian.
Anybody else?
And by the way, I'll finish up the story just a bit. My dad, as I said, he was agnostic. And the only reason he came to church was because my mother asked him to keep me and my little brother behaved. And he did. But after he became a Christian, I saw a change in him. He got active in the church. He went up and he helped wait on the table. He saw that we got dressed and came to church. We couldn't excuse ourselves and say, "I'm sick." He said, "No, you're not. You're coming to church." And so he turned around really big, and that really influenced me to see him make the change he did.
So you had to expect a change and unexpected change happen all at the same time, both for the better. Anybody else? I mean, I know mine was expected. I remember my dad giving me dirty looks and saying, "Well, did you forget to do something today during service?" You know, that kind of thing. But I think when I got baptized, I remember my dad saying, "About time," something like that. I'm like, "Dad, I'm 12 and a half. Come on now." But yeah, it was definitely an expected change in my family. And I think that's an interesting thing. I think, I don't know what I think, but I love to hear. I think the expected stories sometimes are a little more boring than the unexpected stories, but they're both just as important, you know. But I think a lot can be learned from both of them. And yes.
It's not always the change, you know, yes, there should be that change as you go down into the water, you come out. But there's some folks where they, having made that commitment, they come back to it, right? They wandered away and they come back to it, or they've just been sitting here the whole time and decide, you know, like Joe said, I got to do something. I got to step up now. And it's interesting to watch people that sit in church all the time, but then become active. And you can watch some of the other folks around them kind of look at them like, what are you doing? You know, it's almost like you're making the rest of us look bad because you're becoming more active now. Because that person stands out. And that's what we're supposed to do when we take our faith seriously. So change can not only ostracize, yes, people in your family or friends or work, but if you look closely, it happens within the church too. People just watch reactions, and it shouldn't be that way. We should all be excited when someone makes that change, to do more, or try harder, or take it more seriously, rather than to kind of sit back and ride it out, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
We're all familiar with the passage in Romans 6, which talks about the change we make when we become a Christian. And it says when you're baptized, you put on the new life, and the old life is done away with. In fact, the old life is, you're dead to the old life, and you rise to the new life. I heard a story about a missionary who came and visited our church one time, and he said that he was teaching that lesson and trying to convert this village of natives in Africa. And in order to convert them, you have to convert the chief. The people won't convert either. So he stayed with the chief, and he decided to become a Christian. They went down to the river, and the whole village followed them. He went down and he was baptized. He came back up, and when he came out of the water, he turned around and went like this, and he waved at the river. And the missionary said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm waving goodbye to my old life, it's dead." And he was washing it down the water, down the river. And then the village became Christians too.
My dad was baptizing somebody in the river one time as the current river, kind of current. Accidentally let go of him. He had to go pick him up 15 feet downstream. Yes, David?
You know, when you were talking a while ago about coming to the realization that you need to get involved and do things, one of the important things is for those who are already Christians to look and see possibilities in somebody, to encourage them to step up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can tell somebody, you know, you've got a good voice, why aren't you leading singing? You know, why aren't you helping lead prayer, Lord's Supper, whatever else it is? You know, you've got a good heart with people, you know, helping them out, you know, whether it's helping them move or whatever it is. To do that. One of my best friends, he became a Christian about a month after I did. And I don't know how much of a part I had in this. I really don't take any credit for it at all. But when you'd walk into his room, we had rooms that were kind of like a college dorm room in a lot of ways. And wall to wall, bottom to top, he had Playboy pinups, you know, the centerfold. And I mean, you couldn't even see paint between them. You have so close together. And after becoming a Christian, I said, "Why do you have that up there? That is wrong, you know?" And he said, and he would argue, he said, "No, it's art, you know, it's just, that's why I look at it." I went down to his room one day, a few weeks after he had become a Christian, maybe a month. They're all gone. And I said, "What happened?" He said, "I came to the realization that's wrong. You don't do that when you're a Christian. You don't have that kind of stuff." And he got rid of it, never looked back. You know, and those are the kind of things that you do. I remember the language we used to use in the military, you know, the way we behave and stuff, and we put that all behind us, and we don't do that anymore. And you help each other do that. You encourage each other to do that. Makes a big difference.
So moving on to, well, I guess I called it point one again, but our emotional response to change. So in the episode here, to give you an example of kind of how this works, you know, you're going along, everything's okay, everything's copacetic, and then all of a sudden you have a shock. You know, you find out there's a change coming. Opie here found out Rose was leaving. He loved Rose. She could catch frogs. She could catch fish. And he was in shock. During the wedding, he thought, "Oh, you're not really going to leave me." And she's like, yeah, I am. I'm getting married. And then after that initial shock, he goes into denial. Like, she's going to come back. You know, she's going to miss me. And she's going to call. And Andy's like, "No, she's on her honeymoon. She ain't calling you, little boy. She's going to have a good time." So from the denial stage, we start going down. Opie, at one point, before you guys start watching, Andy wakes up and Opie's cooking breakfast. And he's saying, "You know, we don't need Aunt B. We may not have Rose anymore, but we don't need Aunt B. I can take care of it." And Andy says, "How long has that egg been sitting there boiling?" He says, 45 minutes. It's probably about done. So he's going into denial and starting to get down to frustration. And when Aunt B moves in, she cooks him a fried chicken dinner, you know, fried chicken. And Opie doesn't like it. He doesn't want to eat it because it's not like what Rose made. And it gets to the point where, just to get away from Aunt B, Opie says, "You know what, I think I'm going to go take a bath." And for a little 8-year-old boy, Andy recognizes right away, "Whoa, what are you talking about, sis? When are you going to offer to go take a bath?" So at that point, he's kind of in the depression stage, you know. He's low morale, low attitude. And then, you know, Andy decides to tell him that, he says she can't fish, she can't hunt frogs, she can't play baseball. So Andy says, "Okay, we'll try out baseball." And, you know, Opie's seeing this, and he's thinking, you know, maybe he's beginning to experiment, that part where it starts rising, you know. He says, it says initial engagement. So he starts engaging Aunt B. He goes fishing with her, sees that she's trying to fish, but doesn't really know what she's doing. And then as we go up the curve there, you'll see the part that says decision. This is learning how to work in the new situation. So in the end, you guys saw MB, gives him a kiss, says bye, I'm gonna leave, or she leaves, she doesn't tell him bye. And he runs down there and says, you know what, I'll keep you, somebody needs to be able to take care of you. You're not gonna be able to make it on your own. So this is when you start to make the decision to, accept the change. And then the curve goes on to where it says integration. This is where we integrate the change in our life. MB stays with them, for the next 8 seasons or whatever, and she gets integrated into his life just like she was when she took care of his dad, Andy. So question 4, and I hope this one makes sense, and I really want to look at it because I really want you guys to take some time and think about this and try to help me figure it out. But using the change curve, compare a Christian who continues in their faith to someone who is baptized and then falls away. What change factors determine the outcome of their Christian walk? So, it opens up, maybe they're in shock if it's an unexpected change. They start going through this denial, I can't do this sort of stuff anymore. They get depressed, maybe, they're like, I don't want to go to church this Sunday, I want to take a Sunday off. Never mind, I was trying to get you a hard time, and they only came for half the service because they were tired. And then as we go along, it starts going up. So we start accepting and integrating that change, but some of us don't. Some of us fall away from the faith. So what do you guys think, what factors go into that?
What's your level of commitment?
Okay.
I think tied to what Danny said, the world will tell you the only constant is change.
Mm-hmm.
Everything changes. Everything's changing in this country and this world right now, and I don't think for the better. But that's okay, because the thing the Christian knows, the most important constant, God never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the more committed you are to that reality, and the more of a disciple you live by that constant. And so the other constant things are going to change, they are. The only thing that's not going to change is God and my relationship to Him. And that's why it bothers me sometimes that we teach a lot of churchianity, but not really Christianity.
Anybody else? Robert, you've been awful quiet tonight.
Well, I'm just, essentially, I've been listening. I came to the Lord later on in my life, after I had gone through some changes already. I'd gotten a divorce from my first wife and gone through some changes there, those kinds of things, and then I met Levon, and we were talking and got together, and we finally got married, and we were looking for a church for the kids because the kids were young, and I didn't think that I needed to do anything other than find a church that we could all go to and be okay and continue to grow the children, those kinds of things. And I was not aware of very much growing that I needed to do until I got serious about looking at the things that I needed to look at. And sure enough, changes took place, but they took place gradually. I mean, there were some big changes. There were some big changes in my life, but the change occurred, but not really understanding the things that were to encompass that change. And it's a journey, and I'm still on a journey. I have not totally made it yet, and I'm still reaching for better, for being better, a better husband, a better father, a better Christian, a lover of the Lord. So I'm still trying to do that to this day. And I became a Christian and never looked back. Has it been difficult? Somewhat, but I've been blessed so much that the difficulties don't mean very much at all. They're just challenges. And anyway, just to make that long story a little shorter, I'm pleased with where I am, and I'm pleased in the direction that I'm going. And I pray to God that He's pleased with me. He has shown me that in many ways. And he's instructed me in some other ways that you still need to do some other things. So,
It's like some people you talk with, they have that mindset of, well, you know what, I can always do that later. You know? So you talk, well, what if later never comes? You know? I mean, look at James 4:14, what's your life but a vapor? 1 second you're here, the next second you're gone. I'm sure a big majority of the people on 9/11 didn't go to work expecting they weren't going to go home that day. You know, and it was too late for a lot of them. And then other people I've talked with, it's like, these people try to rationalize what they're doing, their lifestyle. And then they would tell me, well, why should I give up doing A, B, and C? Maybe there's not a God. What if there's no God? So I use their mentality and say, well, what if there is? Not that I'm doubting it, but to make them think a little bit from their perspective, well, what if there is? And then they kind of hesitate and start thinking a little bit, but, just to make them realize what they're saying doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest change too that I'm realizing over time is how busy we need to be in the work that we need to be doing. That even some of the things that I've done in my life, I've bypassed that to a point where I can now view it in a different perspective and understand that I need to be a little busier about bringing others to the Lord, about me being more of who I need to be, and those kinds of things.
Okay. Anybody else on any thoughts related to what stumbling blocks some people might hit before they get to that integration part of their Christianity, where they legitimately integrate Christ into their lives?
On your number 4, you see that you chart the curve. I've studied with people that become Christians, and I see them excited and joyous about becoming a Christian. And somebody told me one time that no new Christian ever expected to be a fall-away Christian. Mm-hmm. That's when they become Christians, they're thinking, I'm going to be faithful for the rest of my life. I'm going to go to heaven and follow God, but not all of them follow that path. And as I look at this chart, I see some of them hit some kind of something that makes them turn down in their faith, and they quit coming, and they lose their faith, and they get down into the valley as you showed here, the depression part. Some come out, and some of them never get out of that. And it really hurts me when I see somebody, especially those that I've studied with, and they fall away later. And what can we do to help kickstart them to get out of that depression and get back right with God? What was it that caused their fall to begin with that they couldn't get out of? And the only way we can do that is to go visit with them, and compassion, love, like Jesus did with the wandering sheep. He left the 99 to go find that lost sheep, pick him up, bring him home. When somebody leaves the church, leaves God, we've got to go like a shepherd and try to bring them back, show them the love, and listen to them. And that's one thing that we sometimes don't do. We go there to talk to them and tell them what they got to do. But we got to go and listen to them, what caused the problem, and work with them. And sometimes it takes a while to help bring them back up, to be faithful again.
David and then Raymond?
One of the biggest disappointments that I had as a new Christian was the first time I saw a fight within the church, that there was a problem, and to stop and realize these are God's people and they're fighting with each other, they're arguing. Why would you do that? And as you study, as you grow, and as you live, and as you walk with Jesus, you come to find out that A lot of people are not converted to Jesus, they're converted to religion. And that's why they can fall away so easy. We probably all of us have watched people just walk away from the church, from Christianity, and just be so downcast about it all, and going back and like Joe said, and like Danny said, I was thinking of another story about the preacher who went to visit with a fellow who had been out of duty for a long time, and the guy didn't want to talk about it, but he let the preacher in, and they were sitting in front of the fireplace, and they just sat there looking at the fire, and the preacher reached over and pulled out with the stoker there, one of the coals, got it off by itself, and it gradually just went out. The fire died out within it, and the guy, yeah, I get your point. But it's realizing those things that when you do that, you're walking away from Jesus. And then you learn that it's just a remnant that's going to be saved anyway. It's always been just a remnant. Not everybody who comes through the door and has that title, that they follow. It's a remnant. And God's always been in the remnant business. And that's what we're in too, but you've got to keep trying with every soul so you can find out who the remnant is.
Raymond?
Hey, I listened to the comments in your question. To me, it goes back to Matthew 13 where he talks about, I just have the sower in mind, right? You talk about, not you, but Jesus talks about the ground and where the seed falls, and we see that. And you ask why do you think some people fall away, why some don't? And he explains it right here. There's the cares of this world. There's an enemy that he says comes in and snatches it away. And we have forgotten to teach about that. We don't like to talk about the enemy. It's rare that I've sat at the Church of Christ and hear someone call him the enemy. They just say the devil or whatever, and that's even if they refer to him. But the Bible calls him an enemy, which means he's actively an adversary of God, which means he's our adversary, which the Bible points out in many places. So there's an enemy that exists. There's the cares of this world. There's the fact that there's no roots that take place. But then he talks about the good soil. So that goes into, from what David talked about back to what Joe talked about, is to allow ourselves, good soil most of the time just doesn't happen. It's prepared, it's prepped. And if we are really in the hands and feet of Jesus, which we say we ought to be, then we're going out and visiting those folks, and we're trying to fertilize that soil, we're trying to prep that soil, we're trying to nurture that soil, and so it doesn't become rocky ground, so it doesn't become laden with thorns, so the enemy can't come by and snatch it. That's what we need to be doing as a church, as individuals, so that we can at least, as David said, more of a remnant.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, I think comparing, he asks us to compare a Christian who continues in their faith, compare that curve from one who's become a Christian and has fallen away. The Christian who continues in their faith, I think, continues to plead with the Lord and go in prayer and try to keep their spiritual life high. They're not willing to just give up because they believe the Lord is their strength. So I think the curve difference is the fact that the curve is going to be still curvy, but it's not going to be in such valleys, because we do, as Christians who continue in our faith, we are depending on the Lord. And we have an example here in our church, and that's the Holt family, because they have gone through 2 major tragedies, and they have held on to their faith, and they've held on to their church family. And yeah, it's hard, and they're still grieving. But, with that Christian strength that they have with their brothers and sisters, and the strength to the Lord, to Jesus and the Holy Spirit, they will get to the point which is the integration. They're probably still working on that.
Oh, sure. All right, moving on to the lightning round, because we're starting to run out of time here. The last section talks about helping others through change, and I think that's something throughout the comments on the last section we all talked about, that we need to be there for other people and helping with that change. Where the curve starts going up, somebody's pushing it up, you know? Us, God, we're all working together to get that curve up and start integrating, right? So I think 3 ways we can do it is through comfort, companionship, and prayer. And with comfort and companionship comes that listening element that we also heard some people talk about. So we'll skip question 5 and go to 6 here. Think of a time when you were going through a change in your life. Who helped you through it, and what did they do to help? What helps you go through change? And I think
just having that comfort where you realize you do have a support system. Just have to use it. Don't bottle it all in and say, well, I'm not going to tell Robert that this is going on.
right, well,
You know,
Robert tells us about it.
When you could spend some time and talk to him and say, hey, this is what I'm going through, you know, can you offer me some suggestions? Or, you know, something to that effect. But the issue is sometimes people are too defensive and they won't make that admission to anybody, you know? So it festers, and then pretty soon a lot of times it just blows up.
I mentioned before, but John Wooden has a 7-point creed that his dad gave him. I was just teaching to my kids again the other day at school. One of those is build a shelter against a rainy day, which just means, you know, have a support system that you have already in place when those bad days come, when those changes come, so that you're prepared and have somewhere to seek refuge under. Anybody? Yes, Dave?
One of the best books that I've read in the last few years, and it's helped me a bunch, it was originally entitled Exquisite Agony, and the author changed the title. But basically, what he was talking about was, if God would let his own son be crucified by his own brethren to accomplish God's will through his son, don't you think he would do the same thing with you if you really want to be his child? Question is, will you let him? And when you learn to let him do that and realize it's not only going to happen once in your life, but several times if you're going to be his child walking through this world. But you know, it's okay. Paul says in Galatians 2:20, I have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ is living in me. And the life that right now I'm living by faith in the one who loved me and gave himself up for me. So, you know, if God wants to crucify me, he can crucify me. Whatever, you know, the circumstances are, the situation, because it means I'm just going to end up more like his son. And resurrection will prove that.
The stronger your commitment, the more issues you're going to have to deal with.
Joe?
You were just mentioning about a support system that can help you through those tragedies of a Christian life. My father, described a while ago, passed away of a bad, massive heart attack 5 years after his baptism. And I was 17 at the time. And that devastated me. And it was the support system of the church, our Christian friends in the youth group, our preacher, who just took me in like a son. And then my prayers to God through that ordeal. It took me a long time to get out of the hurt, the pain, and the depression that I was in. But with that support group and God's strength, I came back out. And actually, according to this chart, you notice at the end of it, the end of this chart is higher than when it started. I came out a stronger Christian because of the support group I had, and we're grateful for that.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add?
I think we need to understand that this life that we're trying to lead and live is truly relational. We as people, we're relational people. In other words, we need one another. That's why I'm glad about our Bible studies that we're having. And these are the things that are going on, and we just need more of them. I mean, more and more in that. We need to be able to grow, and as we grow and as we communicate with one another, there's some things that we can communicate with others who are outside of the family, if you will, and our neighbors, because we talk with them every day, or every other day, or once a week, or whenever we're able to talk with our neighbors, and we just need to be more about leading them to that home Bible study that we have, or whatever we have going, or asking if they want to if they want to do a study, if they're interested. So it's having the courage to do that and understanding this is what we need to be about, and we need to be about that more often. That's all.
Okay. I think that's a good closing comment, since we've about reached our time. Moving on to the announcement stage of class. Are there any announcements? What do we need to talk about? What do we need to know about coming up?
So Nancy had knee surgery this morning. She's doing well. She looks well. Lord willing, she says, if she continues to feel this good, she'll be home tomorrow. If you saw in the emails, hopefully, Kurt Alsante, he tested positive for COVID. He's not feeling well. Prayers for him, prayers for Julie that she may not get it. We're going to have a reunion of sorts this Sunday. We'll have more than one speaker. Joe will speak, Robert, Haskell, and afterwards we'll just have some ice cream. We had potluck last Sunday, so we'll have some ice cream and some otter pops for the kids and stuff like that. And so, but please keep an eye on the prayer list as it continues to grow. Just keep those folks who've asked for prayers, or there's folks you know or may not know about, keep everyone in your prayers, please.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Any other info? Yes, David.
And next Wednesday night, we change classes.
Next Wednesday night we change classes. David is moving back on to Mark, right? Picking up where y'all left off.
Back on the mark.
Back on the mark. That can be the
You start, if you want to read ahead of time, read chapter 10, 1 through 12.
Okay, if you want to read ahead of time, chapter 10, 1 through 12. Anything else? Pam and Jake came back from their wedding. They're still married. Well, there we go. That's something to celebrate there. They made it through the first week. Just about. All right, if there's nothing else, Joe, will you dismiss us?
Our dear Father, we are very grateful we could be together here in our Bible study. Each of us have gone through all kinds of changes, some very hurtful ones. But we know that you're here. We know that you love us beyond comparison. Help us to realize that whenever any other changes come in our futures, we can rely on you. Help us to always do so. And thank you for the support of the Christians, our loved ones who come and help us through these times that we need their help. We pray for Nancy and help her to recover from her surgery. Your Father's been good for me and Diane to be here. We love this church very much. Please bless them. Let them stay faithful, always loving, always caring. Bless the elders here, Raymond as he preaches, all the teachers. Please keep them in your arms and your love. In Jesus' name, amen.